and welcome to the last episode of the season of the HoriZone Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald. I am at Bob McDonald on Twitter, and I am also writing at campuspressbox.com. And with me, one more time, Jimmy Lemke.
Hello, everybody. It's a nice day. It's a nice day outside. It's a nice day inside. This is Thursday evening. It's a beautiful day here in Milwaukee. So I can't wait to get this last podcast started.
All right, and unfortunately in Cleveland, it's quite the opposite. It's whatever. Pick a precipitation, and basically it'll be the right answer. So,
I'm just having a. That's all.
Well, thank you. All right, and we're at fourlights.fm. That's been our host this whole season. And you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you can find podcasts. So that's where we are. So you can catch all of the past episodes, and including this last one, which is going to be chock full of stuff. The season is over, but it just seems like it keeps going because there's so many changes. So many changes, including some new head coaching departures and some new ones coming in. So let's just right out of the box, Jimmy. We'll go with the first one that got hired. Wright State snatched away South Dakota State's head coach.
Scott Nagy.
Apparently, Scott Nagy, who got the Jackrabbits to the NCAA tournament this year. I had the pleasure of seeing the South Dakota State earlier in the season. They were in the Cancun Challenge and played Cleveland State and just ran them up and down the gym. I mean, they won by double digits. So they are one of the best teams in the Summit League, and Wright State was able to grab them.
We're very familiar with Scott Nagy and South Dakota State in Milwaukee. I want to say in Jeter's 11 years, we played them 6 games. There was one home and home, a 2-for-2 that was scheduled in about, I want to say 2007, when they were still a provisional D1 team, and then just recently we swept them in a couple games a couple of years back, in Nate Walters' junior and senior years. I will say this. A lot of us gave Bob Grant a lot of crap, and I think rightfully so, because I think it was very personal, his firing of Billy Donlin. But when you fire a head coach, the whole reason behind it, if they are close to being very successful, you have to have justification for it. And the point is that Wright State was in the title game 3 out of the last 4 years. They won 20 games almost every year. Billy Donlin had the program right on the cusp. And in the HoriZone League, in a one-bid conference, it's really unfortunate that all these coaches are getting fired. But if you're going to fire somebody like that, you have to replace them with somebody who's a home run hire. And Scott Nagy's not a home run hire. He's a grand slam hire. This is a guy who is winning well over 60% of his games. He had been at South Dakota State for 20 years. He had built a program up while they were in D2. And then when they moved into Division I, he lost pretty handily for 6 years. And then once he finally got going, he really got going. And he's turned South Dakota State into the success in Division I that it was in Division II. And the funny thing is that a guy who's been there for 20-some-odd years, and you think you're getting somebody who's very old or, kind of towards the end of his career, he's 49. So Wright State has got a guy who's a riser. And they did a hell of a job hiring the next basketball coach. And Scott Nagy stepping into a good situation. They return a couple good players, but I don't think we can expect them to really get going for real for a couple of years. That's not to say they won't contend for a title next year. You don't know, if Scott Nagy's going to pull in any late recruits. I think as graduate transfers become more prevalent, especially this season, the possibility of a new coach getting a couple of those kids, or at least one of those kids, is much higher. So I think Wright State might be able to win immediately. But one thing I am almost 95% certain on is that they will win in the long run. That's a program that's got a great arena. They've got a good practice facility. They've got a great coach. They have support from donors. Their athletic director took a gamble, and I'm not sure I'm really on his side because I think it was pretty personal, but it is what it is. They're in Dayton, where they only have the Flyers to look up to. So I think Wright State has the right concoction they need to really get it going. So I'm very, very happy to see at least one of these programs in this conference going in the right direction. And
I think
I'm
I will
on Bob Grant.
Well, you'll never be able to tell him that because you got blocked. I can say it on your behalf because apparently I was never incendiary enough to get blocked by him on Twitter, so I can feel free to pass along what you just said. So I'm sure that will resonate through because
that'll get you blocked too.
No, you know what? If he was gonna block me, he would have blocked me a while ago. So, that is, and the one thing that I found that was rather noteworthy is I saw kind of what he was making at South Dakota State and what he was offered at Wright State. And it is, I think he's going to make twice as much as he was making at South Dakota State. And he was there for 20 some odd years.
Making something like $172,000 at South Dakota State.
I think he's getting, and apparently as I understand it, he's going to be making north of 400.
North of 500.
At Wright State. North of 500.
I heard Wright State more than $500,000. That might be including all incentives.
Yeah.
So
typically that's kind of how that goes.
I heard from
but I find it.
Yeah.
But I find that interesting because of the fact we've had this conversation about the Summit League and the HoriZone League, and this is an interesting example of the best, definitely one of the best Summit League coaches by far. And the HoriZone League team was able to get one of the top coaches in the Summit League. So maybe it's a sign. Maybe maybe this was just a down year. Maybe it was an aberration. Maybe things could look up. I'm saying.
So. I mean, South North Dakota State was a very good coach, and he ended up at Ohio. So I don't think that the Summit League, being a great Summit League coach gets you to the top level right away. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure that Wright State will get at least a good 3 or 4 years out of Scott Nagy. If he's there longer, maybe it just takes him a little longer to get it going. I mean, once they turned to D1, when South Dakota State got to D1, it took them a few years. So maybe, but obviously the Ohio recruiting ground is much, 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 much deeper than Dakota, where you're really fishing around Iowa and Minnesota.
It is.
Yeah. So
but he was able to make it work, though. I mean, he was able to make it. If he's able to make it work and be able to create a program of the caliber that South Dakota State is in South Dakota, I can almost imagine what he's going to be able to do in the Dayton area, let alone the rest of Ohio.
You've got
by the way, It really is. I'm sure that by the way, I'm sure the folks at the Dayton Daily News who created their own little list of potential candidates is sad because he wasn't on that list at all. So maybe kind of not pull it out of the hat next time, guys.
I think the Dayton Daily News basically just kind of shot themselves in the foot. I think.
I don't think they're. It just, yeah. I don't. In terms of credibility, I'm not sure it really makes much of a difference because I think I mentioned in the previous episode that Wright State fans have a relatively low opinion of the Dayton Daily News as it is. I'm sure their little list didn't help matters any, and the fact that they went with a guy like Scott Nagy, who wasn't even on that list, and is probably one of the best hires that the best person they could possibly get for the job. I think it's hilarious.
I don't think they could have possibly hired a better coach unless they were willing to start shilling out $750,000, $800,000, $1 million. With Wright State, it's funny that they complain about the Dayton Daily News all the time, even before this, because Wright State's the one school in the conference that actually gets consistent coverage throughout the year, let alone the season. Dayton Daily News, you'll see coverage of Wright State basketball in June and August. It may not be like real big, crushing breaking news or anything, but they get coverage. Whereas, here in Milwaukee, there in Cleveland, most of the bigger cities in the HoriZone League, we have to basically fight just to get, any kind of column inches during the season. So it's kind of funny that the Dayton Daily News, which should be covering Wright State as at least its second most, considering that, Dayton is in a better conference. But Ohio State is a couple hours down the road. You'd think that Wright State would get better coverage, and they do. But then again, where the hell did this list come from? It looks like a list that somebody who's a Dayton fan just decided to throw out there and say, "Here."
That's what it looked like to me. I mean, that's what. But it's over now. They got their guy. And speaking of getting their guy, Jimmy, we can now go to Milwaukee. Now has their own coach. They have LaVall Jordan.
LaVall Jordan is
for those scoring at home. If the name LaVall Jordan sounds familiar, former Butler player, who last year was was an assistant at Michigan State. So
he's been at Michigan. No, Michigan, not Michigan State.
Michigan State. That's Bryn Forbes' fault right there. That he got Michigan State on the brain.
Let's not think about Bryn Forbes. His career is over. LaVall Jordan, after he played at Butler, I believe he was a graduate assistant. He got on staff at Butler, was with Butler pretty much through the Licklider years. Became an assistant coach at Iowa when Licklider went to Iowa.
I think I remember that.
Licklider never got it going at Iowa. He ended up leaving that staff, going to Michigan, and I think it happened when he got fired. Was it 4 or 5 years ago? And without Michigan since, he worked as an assistant mainly with the guards. I have talked to a few coaches. I have talked to a couple of guys who have worked with him. And they say that he works with the bigs more than people know, but he's mainly a guards guy. What they were saying to me is that he's not just a guards guy. He knows how to coach the bigs, and he has done so pretty well from what people who have worked with him have told me. We know that Butler fans wanted LaVall Jordan when Brad Stevens went to the Celtics. So for me, I like that in and of itself, because if those Butler fans have that high of a view of him, he must be a pretty dang good player. And Butler, as we all know, well, they do things in a great way. And for LaVall Jordan,
well, the way, I mean, in the way that, and that's actually very telling that you mentioned that transition from Brad Stevens. You mentioned that, and then you mentioned the idea of them wanting LaVall Jordan. And knowing the history of Butler basketball as we know it, and a lot of they're real big on hiring internally and next man up and all that, and it's very telling to me, at least, that for all the next man up, they wanted LaVall Jordan to be that guy. Knowing the history of Butler, that's an interesting thing. I'll be honest with you. Ever since Butler left the HoriZone League, I haven't really been paying too much attention to them. So, good catch on that one.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. I know that our fan base really wanted to get somebody who had already had head coaching experience. They really. Oh, by the way, it is official because the MKE Panthers Twitter account 20 minutes ago put it out there.
There you go. So is it 8:45 Eastern Standard Time or 7:45 Central Time on April 7th, 2016? LaVall Jordan is officially named the Milwaukee head coach.
Yeah, a lot of our fans really wanted Jeter to be replaced by a guy who's been a head coach, has won at a lower level, whether it's a low major, Division II or Division III. We knew that they were going to be spending less for Jeter's replacement, so they were expecting it was going to be more towards the D2, D3 thing. I had noted that Amanda Braun, the AD, was following Tom Billiter, the head coach at Augustana, on Twitter. I pointed that out on our message board at PantherU.com. I pointed that out before the tournament was over, before Augustana even Augustana won the Division II tournament this year. So, the Tom Billiter guy, was somebody that a lot of our fans wanted. There's a guy who played.
If I'm not mistaken, I think in an interesting twist of fate, by the way, I think Billiter is being kicked around as a name to ironically replace Scott Nagy over at South Dakota State, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, that would be it's such a great puzzle fit, and from what coaches have told me, that Nagy and Billiter have a very good relationship. So my guess is that Nagy will be. My guess is that Billiter is pretty much like the perfect jigsaw puzzle piece, and that Nagy might have been willing to get Billiter that spot. For me, what people really wanted to avoid, the people that didn't want another Rob Jeter. People didn't want a highly touted recruiter as an assistant coach who's young. Like, they wanted experience. And they really wanted experience. The youth was okay, but they really wanted experience as a head coach, and they wanted somebody who won championships. And because it's what's worked for us before. Bo Ryan didn't win a lot here in his 2 years, but he won a lot more than his predecessor Rick Cobb in the 2 years, and then obviously he did what he did afterwards. And he had won 4 Division III titles at Platteville in Wisconsin. Bruce Pearl. Is our best, who has taken us to our mountaintop of the Sweet 16. He was a Division II national championship winning coach at Southern Indiana. So we really wanted to have, not we, I should say, a lot of our fans wanted to have somebody who had that kind of pedigree or that kind of resume come in and take the job. I personally, I know that a lot of the problems for Milwaukee have nothing to do with the coach. So for me, the coach is a good hire if he can get the people who need to support the program to support the program, and that's so we have a lot of systemic problems that need to be fixed for LaVall Jordan to succeed as our coach. LaVall Jordan is like the others that were on the Jeff Goodman list. Actually, LaVall Jordan wasn't even on Jeff Goodman's list. Was
No,
it?
he wasn't. I
He's
didn't see.
a high
I don't remember LaVall Jordan being on Goodman's list. I don't remember them being on there.
recruiter and a high major, and that's what Rob Jeter was. That's why people were trying to go. In fact, Akeem Springs on Twitter this morning even posted a picture of the two of them next to each other and was like, "Does anybody see what I'm seeing?" Because LaVall Jordan and Rob Jeter actually look a lot alike. I mean, they're but I mean, they look like that. Like Jeter looks like he could be his older brother, and so it's just really funny for that. So I know that some of our fans were disappointed to not see this a lower division head coach get the job. I had been told by people.
Now let me ask you this. This is actually a very important. This is a question that I need to pose to you, because given kind of the way this is kind of gone, kind of the entire way this is kind of played out in Milwaukee, because obviously there's still a little some lingering things going on. So what is it? What does this particular? What is this hire? Does the hire help in any way, shape, or form, or are you still looking at a situation in Milwaukee where there's going to still be some unanswered questions, some unaddressed concerns as yet? I mean, that's kind of the question that I have.
Definitely unaddressed concerns. Okay. Remember how I was going through how Scott Nagy is just one part of how Wright State has everything lined up the right way? Milwaukee doesn't have everything lined up the right way. LaVall Jordan looks to be he could be a very successful coach. On the other hand, he is one cog in a machine. And John Calipari had given an interview to the Sporting News preview when he was in Memphis. This is years and years ago. And he said this line that it takes a village for a program to succeed. And while at Memphis, it took a village at Memphis and not a bag of cash, is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. When he's talking about how a mid-major needs to succeed, the line rings true. You need an athletic, you need support staff, you need assistant coaches, you need donors, you need fans, you need season ticket holders, you need the area AAU and head coaches at high schools. You need people all on board. You need the academic side of the university, all starting with lecturers and all the way up to the chancellor. Everybody needs to do their part for this to be successful. And I'm not saying that some lecturer needs to, pick up a shovel and start digging, for the practice facility. For some of these people, it's as their contribution can be as little as not slamming the university or not slamming basketball while they talk to other people in everyday conversation. But for LaVall Jordan to succeed, those people need to do their thing, but all the way up to the chancellor and the athletic director, and all these people need to have their ducks in a row, because otherwise he's not going to be able to succeed at the level that he could possibly succeed at. So LaVall Jordan, I am very excited. I'm very excited to meet him. I've never met the guy. I know that I still talk to our now previous coaching staff and some guys who have worked on our staff, and universally they all say that LaVall Jordan's a great coach. That he'll do a great job. If he gets the support they didn't get. The last part is my line. That's not their line. But people say he's a good coach and a good pick. So yes, I do think that LaVall Jordan will be good. I think that I still believe that, and this comes from obviously you and I and maybe myself and other people who are around our program come from different angles. The athletic director needs to go. This is not a Bob Grant having maybe a personal problem with basketball coach. This was a much this one's rooted much deeper and much stronger. Amanda Braun needs to go. I don't know if that. I think she just needs to get out of the university overall. But I'd love to give her a non-renewal. Send her somewhere else so she could run out the clock on her contract. And show her if you go to PantherU.com, the latest story, I haven't posted on LaVall Jordan yet because I had a very busy day off today with my wife. But if you go to PantherU.com, the headline article is Amanda Braun is not a racist.
Oh, Jesus.
I never thought I'd write it before, but it was something that people had brought up. Chief among them, State Senator Lena Taylor, at the press conference when Amanda Braun announced the firing of Jeter. She proclaimed that she accused Braun of being racist in her decisions. Now, I never believed for a second that Amanda Braun was truly racist. But read the article, or not an article, read the blog post. There's a reason why Amanda Braun needs to go. In fact, there's a laundry list of reasons. And that's a pretty good breakdown. We only have 45 minutes. I don't want to take up people. There's my
especially since Valpo. Since we got to talk about Valpo. I mean, wow. I mean, for the first time in nearly 30 years, a Drew is not going to be the head coach at Valpo. Bryce Drew has finally taken the leap, taken the plunge, and went to Vanderbilt. And to Valpo's credit, they did not mess around. They absolutely did not mess around in finding his replacement. And you knew when you move that quickly, you know they're going to promote from within. And they went with Matt Lodich.
Yeah, he's. I mean, staying in house. You mentioned how Butler did that. Valpo staying in house with Matt Lodich. That's a good pick. Stanford alum. He's not as highly touted as a recruiter, but as an X's and O's coach. So I'm really happy that Valpo got a guy who can really keep he won't have as much of a learning curve, or at least his resume would suggest he doesn't have as much of a learning curve.
Sure. Not to mention the fact that obviously, given the lineup that Valpo has coming back next year, I think he's really going to, he already knows what he has. So X's and O's for Valpo next year is exactly what they need. And I think, the rest of it, he is going. It looks like Luke Gore is still going to remain on the staff. I think. Who did Bryce Drew take with him? I can't even remember his name right now. I'm sorry. Who?
It's Roger Powell, the former Illinois player.
Yeah, because Roger Powell was thought of to be in the mix, but it looks like Powell is going with Bryce Drew. I guess an amicable split. It looks like Bryce Drew is taking Powell with him. Gore staying with Lodich. Everybody's happy.
Well, I'm happy for them because you want to be able to promote from within if at all possible, because you have that continuity. A new coach comes in, will totally turn the place upside down because they're not part of the last staff. Lodich will come in and it'll really be about strengthening what they had under Bryce. He's obviously going to have the long leash that Bryce had, even though Bryce never needed to have a long leash.
No.
I'm actually kind of disappointed with Bryce. Not the leaving itself. Obviously that happened. I know that Bryce wanted to win in the NCAA tournament before going on, but Valpo did everything to do and got the door shut on them this year. So I think it was a matter of looking in the mirror and saying, am I ever going to be able to do it here? And if Bryce does fail down the road, I don't think the door is ever really closed. But it's kind of surprising to me. It's kind of surprising to me that he hasn't called Somebody mentioned that he hasn't contacted Michael Ozapoff or Paul Oren of the Northwest Indiana Times. Since
Really?
so I
No kidding.
saw somebody tweet that at them. And Ozapoff I get because he's still relatively new. But Paul Oren is a guy who was there not long after Bryce graduated and has been since. I mean, he was a student. He graduated. He came back here to Milwaukee for a few. Paul's from a few miles from where I live.
Oh, okay.
So Paul Oren is a Valpo guy. He was in Milwaukee for a couple of years. Went back to Valpo. He's a teacher for their journalism. He covers the basketball team. If he wasn't covering the team, he would be one of its biggest fans. And this is a guy who Bryce should know very, very well from being, around 10 years plus. And he called him. And
Really?
it's just
that's weird.
I've heard a couple things besides that. The other thing that really bothers me about from Bryce's point of view is there was a report today that I saw that said that Bryce's camp was reaching out to Vanderbilt while the NIT was still going on.
Okay.
While his team was still playing in the NIT, he had floated his name out to Vanderbilt, or maybe not he, but maybe somebody in his camp was talking to Vanderbilt, and that just bothers me so much, because what would have happened? How would you feel if you were Alec Peters or Vashil Fernandez or Keith Carter? How would you feel if you were one of those players and that story, if that had been broken today, but had maybe broken 2 weeks ago while they're in the middle of the NFL? How would you feel about that? I know that.
I mean, his name was already. Well, even during the NIT, his name was getting kicked around everywhere around the country. Which I understand because it's Bryce Drew. He's his name's gonna get kicked around everywhere. But the fact that this kind of came out, that's kind of interesting to me that would actually come to pass, really. And I don't know.
I don't know. It seems to me to be, if it's true that Bryce's camp was floating out, putting feelers out to Vanderbilt while he was coaching in the NIT, that bothers me more than I thought. And I don't hold any ill will. It just kind of makes me a little disappointed. And I feel bad for Valpo because they invested so much. Not the money, but the hopes and dreams of that program were based on Bryce. A lot like the people really started to put their faith in Brad, and it just wasn't it just didn't ring quite. It didn't ring true because you knew eventually Bryce was going to leave, but would have hoped that number one, it would have been, his team was done playing. Vanderbilt and Georgia, the Georgia Tech was the other one that he had been rumored for. You've got a lot of people a lot of schools were still open.
Sure.
Open at the end of the NIT. So if you really,
if
your name was one they wanted to hire, you could have, you could have put out feelers and you could have said, look, can we talk about it after my team is, or just said, look, I may be interested, but we're still playing, something along those lines. And I know how those players could have felt, because I talk with a lot of our alumni, and the night before the Sweet 16 game with Illinois in 2005. A couple of players told me that a couple of guys were getting ice at the hotel ice machine in the hallway. Saw some Tennessee people lurking around. So and they told me that because we had been talking. This was years ago, but they were telling me about how it kind of messed with. He told me it was messing with his head and the head of the other guy that he was with. That really to know that guy went into the game. He actually had a pretty poor game in the Sweet 16. To hear that and then hear this story, it just kind of reminds me of that. So I really hope that's not the case. I hope it was false. I've always thought very highly of Bryce. He's a very, very good person with very good character from every encounter that I've ever had with him. I've really enjoyed his company, in the brief moments that I had it. And I really hope it's
Yeah.
The guy is ready. Give him the reins. Let's see what he's.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and I and like I said, yeah, I really can't. I can't really speak to the whole. I honestly didn't think Vanderbilt was the type of position. I thought there might be something else. Maybe I don't know. I don't really. Maybe I don't kind of get the whole appeal of Vanderbilt as a maybe it's because it's in the SEC and it's not Mississippi State. I don't know, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I would say this about Vanderbilt Bryce and Vanderbilt is that Bryce is very religious, and his family is the Drew family is a very spiritual family. So Vanderbilt being one of those schools, in Nashville, I think that part of the calling was that he could go to a school, or which is like Valparaiso, a school where you're safe to really be open with your faith. 2016.
Yeah. Oh yes, absolutely.
It's not the case in a lot of places. I know that. No. Sometimes when I'd see Rob Jeter or one of our players praying on the sideline, you'd see somebody. Sometimes it would be one of our own fans, and they kind of give a little look like, not like disappointment, but a little bit of leeriness. I think that may happen. I think that exists.
Well, I have to tell. That's interesting. You meant that's strange that you mentioned that because that's an interesting dynamic, and with in Cleveland State with Gary Waters, that's a lot. That's like literally the cornerstone of what he's about. I mean, every press conference, he praises he praises God even winning the loss. That's what he does. I mean, that's how deeply religious he is. So I kind of I'm sorry.
So you want to see deeply religious? Go look at Tracy Dildy's Twitter account, the former UIC assistant who's the head coach at Chicago State. Go look at his Twitter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I there's always this. I just find I get the connection. Some of the connections that they're there. So I mean, it's not I've seen it. Well, so it's not something I look sideways at because I've seen it and I've seen kind of the way the diversity of faith as it were within not just within the HoriZone League but within sports in general. So it's it's to me it's kind of something I see and it's like okay, that's great.
I think the pull for Bryce. I think it was for Bryce. The fact that Vanderbilt is a school where faith is embraced and where faith was embraced by maybe not universally, but by quite a lot of people, where you can be very open and pursuant to that, and like Valpo, I think that played a big part in it. I wouldn't say I'm not saying that Mississippi State is not. Mississippi State is also not the Vanderbilt is, but you can recruit a high character kid.
Sure, of course we can.
a lot of things you can do at private schools also that you can't do at public schools. So I would that's part of it. But I will say this: I wish him the best of luck, just like I wish just like I wish Billy Donlin the best of luck wherever he ends up. I wish Bob Jeter the best of luck wherever he ends up. Obviously, that's a little more closer to me than the other guys, but it's funny to me that a lot of these guys who are head coaches in this conference and these coaching staffs, the Valpo Milwaukee staff, the Wright State staff, these were very close coaching staff. They knew each other very well, so it's interesting to see them walk on. Obviously,
so
the Rains.
So, well, Jimmy, we've got a little less than we're getting really near the end of the road here, and wow, we didn't even really talk a lot about Ray McCallum getting bounced out of Detroit. Literally the worst kept secret ever, by the way. But I guess that whole search is going to keep going on forever and ever and ever.
Expect Bakari Alexander to get that job, and if they don't, it'll be because Detroit couldn't. That sounds to be about it for me. I think Bakari.
And not Gary Waters, guys. Not Gary Waters.
Waters. Detroit is not going to. They're not going to spend money and go get Gary Waters.
I don't think that's a. I can't. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah. Somebody will have to explain that one to me at some point in time, but I can't see it. I mean, the only thing I can. I mean. Well, yeah, he recruits Detroit, but I mean, yeah, all right. He's not leaving Cleveland State. Yeah, he'd have to. Yeah, he'd have to take he'd definitely have to take a pay cut to go to Detroit. And I don't even think John Perry would even give him permission to interview with Detroit, a Horizon League rival, because if he wanted to do that, he can pretty much chuck his fat contract out the window. So I don't think that's happening.
You're stuck with
so
it's been a nice season. I'll say this for all Horizon League people that have been caught on to the podcast and subscribe. I'm really happy. Make sure you subscribe, by the way, because we will be back next year.
Yes, we will be.
Maybe we'll do a summer, maybe we'll do a summer one or one in the late spring or something, just to maybe dabble here or there by, a status update, if you will, before next season starts. But I really wanted to say it was a very long season. It was a very tumultuous season.
Long, Jimmy. Your team didn't lose 23 games.
And then fired our coach for some reason. But it's just I'm really happy that while coaches leave, and it looks like 7 of the 10 coaches will be in their first or second year next season. Mm-hmm. While coaches leave, I'm very happy to say that we're all still going to be here. Bob, you're going to be here. I'm going to be here. Fans like Dirta is going to, the big Ds, whether you're talking about WSU or UIC, we're all here. And we onward and upward. And, I think the Horizon League has better days ahead. I'm really being hopeful with that. I really think the Horizon League has better days ahead. The hires of Nagy and Lodich and Jordan all give me hope. I think that the Horizon League is going to be strong moving forward and get better, and hopefully we can, get better sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to get the last word on this one. It's been a hell of a season for us, everybody. I mean, the ups, the downs, I gotta say, when we came up with this idea and looked at this, I was like, oh, what the hell are we getting ourselves into? But I gotta say, this has been a fun ride for us, and I'm looking forward to it next season. So, Thanks to everybody who has visited the podcast, and we're gonna wrap this up for this season, but we are definitely gonna be looking forward to seeing all of you next year.
Yes, thanks everybody. Take care.
All right, see ya. And that, my friends, is that.